You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of GHS-TV's award-winning talk show Crosstalk. I'm your host, Scarlett Simpson. Each week in this time slot, we take a look at different issues, personalities, and events that affect you and our community. We are here in Memphis' Central Gardens. Having been named one of North America's best old house neighborhoods, Central Gardens is a community filled with rich history, beautiful architecture, and is well known for their annual home and garden tours. Today, we will learn about the history of Central Gardens, as well as give you a preview of what you can see on this year's tour. I will talk with members of the Central Gardens Association, as well as owners of the homes you will see. But first, I sat down with President of Central Gardens Board of Directors, Kathy Ferguson, as well as homeowner CARLA BALCH. Ms. Ferguson, Ms. BALCH, thank you so much for being on our show today. So, Ms. Ferguson, we'll start with you. Central Gardens has been a part of Memphis' history for a long time. Can you tell us about the significance of Central Gardens within our community?
Certainly. So if you've done any history in studying the city of Memphis and where we were in the late 1800s, after the Civil War and after the yellow fever epidemic, Memphis actually lost its charter because we lost so much of our population. Around 1893, I think it was, we got the charter back, and it was in that decade where Memphis started becoming prosperous again, and Memphians recognized the need to move east, as we still tend to do. So this neighborhood, Central Gardens, and our neighbors just to the west, which is at Ansdale, would have been the first suburb, if you will, of Memphis. So you're just, a few miles from downtown, you can throw a rock and hit it, but still we were considered back then the first suburb. So the movers and shakers at the time, politicians and lawyers and doctors, helped to come into this area and first establish it.
Well, Ms. BALCH, as a homeowner, what do you feel are the benefits of living in this community?
I've always wanted to live in Central Gardens. It is just so unique in Memphis, but being here a year, I've met my neighbors, and they are the picture of Southern hospitality. So I think that's one of the most attractive things once you're in the neighborhood is the neighbors.
Can you give us a brief history of the home?
Sure, it was built by B.B. Harvey in 1925. He was a cotton broker, and to your point, a lot of the businessmen and politicians and personalities had moved just 2 miles east of downtown. It was then sold to Leslie Stratton, who owned a hardware company. So 2 really big businessmen in town, and with us being the 7th owner, that's a lot of house and a lot of years for only 7 owners.
Well, you have a beautiful home and garden, Ms. BALCH. What does it take to keep up with the home and the yard?
You have to love it, for sure, but we do love it. There's tweaks that you have to make to a 90-year-old house, but thankfully the people that came before us were very good about taking care of it. So, we just have to do the odd thing. Then my husband loves working in the yard, and the garden it's a lot cooler than it is sort of outside the neighborhood, so it's not as bad as you might think.
Well, Ms. Ferguson, according to your website, Central Gardens aims to be the premier historic residential neighborhood in the Mid-South. How do you both think you accomplish this? Ms. Ferguson, we'll start with you.
Well, with the programs that the Central Gardens Association supports, CARLA mentioned how neighborly we are. We have our own events, but then we also encourage our neighbors to be neighborly and to hold their own block parties and to have gatherings. We are what we call a neighborhood of front porches. So when you're out on the front porch having a glass of tea or a glass of wine, we encourage neighbors to come up and speak to one another and really, be neighborly. Also, too, we are stewards of the historic, conservation of this neighborhood. Just like many of the other historic neighborhoods in Midtown, we think that preservation of these old homes is critically important. You know, to be able to drive through a city and see buildings that are turn of the century, that are kept up as well as the homes here are, you know, like Carla's home, it's very unique. It gives you a sense of place when you're in the neighborhood. So the sense of place with the architecture and the sense of place that you have because of the way the neighbors make you feel, I think that makes us premier and historic.
In the early 1900s, this neighborhood was established on the words that there was room for all. Do you still think this is true to this day?
You know, I do. We are fortunate to have apartment communities within, so we are 1,500 households comprise Central Gardens, and we do have apartment communities. We have condo communities, we have smaller bungalow homes, and then of course, you know, the larger homes that exist here on Belvedere. We have college students that come in and rent the, you know, the lovely back houses that we have, and then you've got, you know, young families that move in when they're just starting out. We represent all ethnicities, all age groups, so I do think we really are open to all.
I agree. You know, I've just been here a year, but getting to know our neighbors, you know, one of the beautiful things is there's lots of different architectural styles, but they're all set back in the same sort of stately manner, and they have the same width of the lot. I find the homeowners to be the same. They're all very different. They have, you know, different opinions, but it's what makes it unique. We all accept each other, value the differences, and it's just sort of like the owners represent the same thing that the neighborhood does. We find community in our differences.
Well, Ms. Ferguson, you have many programs and events that happen at Central Gardens. There's the 4th of July parade and your tree replacement program, to name a few. How can people who don't live in the area become involved?
Well, we do have, say, become involved, of course, the July 4th parade, coming to volunteer for that, or volunteering for our home tour, which is that's our big fundraiser, and that's the event we really open up the neighborhood for anyone to come and see. Excuse me, volunteering for that would be something. But I think, you know, for young people like you and the students at Germantown High School, I think getting involved and active in the history of your area, whether it be Central Gardens or Midtown, or also Germantown. Germantown has a wonderful history. Understanding your history and studying it and preserving it for future generations, I think that would be a lovely way for young people to get involved.
Well, you did mention your annual Home and Garden Tour. What is the significance behind that?
Well, because these homes do look so different as you're driving through the neighborhood, people that are new to Memphis or people that don't often visit Midtown drive through and they're very curious to see what a home might have looked like when it was built in, you know, 1905. Like they say, they just don't build them like that anymore. We have some very unique architectural elements in these homes. The unpainted millwork, the stonework is beautiful. So the home tour gives us an opportunity to share with the region, and we have people come from all over the South to tour these homes to see how what it was like at the turn of the century, but then also to see the modern adaptations, you know, the new kitchens that are going in, how you can design a home that is turn of the century, but still have all the modern amenities that you would expect to have today.
Well, even though Central Gardens started in the late 19th century, what are some of the ways you've adapted to changing times?
Well, I mean, when they first built this neighborhood, you had carriage houses that, you know, held the horses. Of course, we've had to put in the streets, we've had to put in the sidewalks, you know, to stay updated. We've got the beautiful old light poles that you see that we have to keep up to date. I really think that the neighbors have done a fantastic job in keeping with our conservation guidelines and updating the homes so that they are comfortable for modern day living and have the space that you want to have, but still pay homage to the builders and architects that designed these homes so many years ago.
We talked a lot during this segment about the history of Central Gardens, but what do you both see in the future for this area? Ms. Balch, we'll start with you.
I would imagine that we could be sort of a benchmark for other cities. Memphis is very special. Central Gardens and our neighboring communities are really special in that we value what has come before us. And you know, we try our best to live in the present but honor the past. And I would love to see the preservation of our charm be replicated in other cities. It attracts, I think, very unique people to our city.
You know, I mentioned the sidewalks a moment ago, and sidewalks were placed in the 40s and 50s, and a lot of those are, cracking not just in our neighborhood, but neighborhoods all over Memphis. We're trying to work with city government on how we can improve that, and in doing so, we are setting a benchmark for other neighborhoods all over the country that are having to do the same sort of thing. Just like Carla said, when it comes to preservation, we really do take the forefront on that, and a lot of the other neighborhoods kind of follow our lead.
Well, Ms. Balch, Ms. Ferguson, thank you so much for being on our show and allowing us into your beautiful backyard.
Thank you so much.
We have to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll visit another home to talk about the lush greenery you'll find throughout Central Gardens.
Hello and welcome to Cable Quiz, the academic.
Do you know how incredible it is to work at a TV station in high school?
GHS-TV is a student-run television station.
There's so many things you can do here at GHS-TV. You can be in front or behind the camera or both. You have that opportunity. There are no limits.
We have sports and we have news and we have entertainment. So the students here get a well-rounded view of what it's like to be in the TV field.
It's my life. It's what I want to do.
From all of us here at GHS-TV, thanks for starting your morning with us. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
So, Ms. Weinberg, we'll start with you. Central Gardens is named the Level 3 Arboretum of West Tennessee. Can you explain this distinction?
Well, that's a state distinction, and there's only 2 level 3s in the state, and it's pretty unusual because we're in the middle of the city. Usually they're in a botanic gardens or something like that.
Well, Mr. Dewey, you have a beautiful home. How long have you lived here?
Just 3 years now.
And can you give us a brief history of your home?
Well, the home was built in 1916. At the time the homes on the street were built. I moved in 2014, I'm sorry.
Mr. Dewey, it seems like your home has a long history, but what have you done with the home since you've moved in?
Well, Scarlett, not much. So many homeowners keep these homes in pristine shape to begin with. So about all I've done at this point is had it repainted.
Well, Ms. Weinberg, you do a lot in your position as Chair of Green Spaces and Infrastructure Committees. Can you tell us some of your responsibilities?
Well, it's a fairly new position to the board. It was installed last year, so I guess 2016. And the umbrella of this position encompasses anything from sidewalk improvement to alley improvement to our working with neighborhood parks. We don't have any parks specifically in our borders, but we do want to be engaged with parks that are close by. And the medians. We have some beautiful medians like the Belvedere median that we want to protect and preserve.
Well, Ms. Weinberg, how does your committee make sure that Central Gardens community is well cared for?
Well, for instance, last year we embarked on a huge overview of our sidewalk infrastructure. And we've got a great committee in place doing amazing research. We've actually physically taken pictures and reported on each individual home and the condition of the sidewalk, and we're trying to figure out a way to, through quadrant work, correct those sidewalks so that our community can be more walkable moving forward.
Does the fact that the Arboretum is in a residential neighborhood make it stand out?
Oh, absolutely stand out. Again, it is a state designation, but any of the Arboretum designations, it's very unique to have it in an urban setting. That's almost non-existent.
Well, you have many programs in Central Gardens to maintain the look of your community. One of those programs is the Tree Replacement Program. Can you tell us about this and its significance?
So it's not really a part of the Arboretum, but because our neighborhood is so beautiful with its trees, we want to make sure they're chronically being replenished. We just lost some in a bad summer storm. So we have a program that every homeowner can apply for and get a free tree every year. Greg Tulliadis does an amazing job of kind of consulting with the homeowner and making sure that they choose the right tree in the right spot in their neighborhood that will grow and thrive and add to our hardwood canopy.
The annual Home and Garden Tour is just a few months away. Mr. Dewey, as a homeowner, how do you prepare?
I start cleaning from top to bottom, inside and out.
And is there anything else that you do to prepare?
Well, we meet with the docents to make sure that they know the home well. We meet with other committee members on the association to make sure that we're doing our level best to make a good home tour.
How did your home become a part of the annual Home and Garden Tour?
Well, I was asked by the Central Gardens Association if I would be interested, and I would, happily accept it.
How does your committee become involved with the annual Home and Garden Tour?
Well, as a member of the board, we are expected to participate in some way, but basically offer support in whatever role they need, whether it's making sure everything looks really clean and lovely, or just helping by volunteering to be a docent or sell tickets.
Well, Central Gardens is made up of 511 acres, which is a lot. How do you keep up with the maintenance of the property?
Well, the city helps tremendously, obviously, and then we try to encourage homeowners just by block by block to do the best they can, and if they need help, they need to ask.
Of course, your committee is involved with a lot of keeping up with the neighborhoods, but how does the city become involved?
Well, a lot is education of the homeowners. We make sure that homeowners know what their responsibilities are and know what tools are available through the city to get the help they need. The 311 app is a great tool that's used. Last year we did a project called City Sweep, which was a City of Memphis rollout that they did neighborhood by neighborhood, and basically we just encouraged one weekend in June everyone to clean up at the same time, and then the city came and picked up everything in 1 week. So it was more of a community effort.
Well, Central Gardens does have an app out. How do you feel that affects Central Gardens as a community? Mr. Dewey, we'll start with you.
Well, that's a good question. I think if you're referring to the website, it's a great resource for homeowners to learn more about the association and to get involved with committees and the meetings.
And Ms. Weinberg?
Well, there's actually an Arboretum app, which is nice too. So you can come in from any neighborhood and just take a stroll and use the Arboretum app, and actually it identifies the trees and the addresses for you. It uses a GPS tracking system, which is kind of fun.
Can you tell us about some of the special events that happen year-round at Central Gardens?
Oh wow, gosh, so many. I mean, we do a lovely, fun 4th of July parade that is always a big hit. We also every fall, well around Thanksgiving, hang Christmas trees on every one of the light posts in Central Gardens, the historic light posts, which is actually a pretty big project. Storing them to putting them up to taking them down. We do an annual spring meeting that always has wonderful speakers and things like that. There's always something fun going on.
Well, we've talked about the community action projects, but what exactly do they entail?
Well, I'll go back to the sidewalk project. So this is really a community-driven project that was born out of the strategic plan that we did last year, where people said we want our community to be more walkable. And so what we've done is install a committee that's actually working hard to identify where the problems are, and then moving forward with action items like contacting the city, understanding what the resources are from the city, which are very few, and then how do we get money to do the rest of the projects and make our community walkable and enjoyable.
Well, Mr. Dewey, how do the homeowners become a part of maintaining the community?
Well, a couple of different things. I believe getting in touch with and getting involved with the association, Central Gardens Association, to interact with others in the neighborhoods. And then on an individual basis, I suspect just keeping up your place.
What is it about the architecture of the homes that makes these homes so special? Mr. Dewey, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm not a student of architecture, but I'm aware that there's a number of distinct styles in the neighborhood, from prairie style to, Spanish style, etc.
This last question is for both of you. What do you think makes this neighborhood so unique?
Well, for me, it's 100% the people. They're active, engaged, urban dwellers that are interested in moving the city forward. And that, to me, is what made Central Gardens so special.
And Mr. Dewey?
Oh, I think I'd agree with Ms. Weinman.
Well, Ms. Weinberg, Mr. Dewey, thank you so much for being on our show and for allowing us to see your beautiful home.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
We have to take another break, but when we come back, we'll visit one final house to talk more about the annual Home and Garden Tour.
It's
a program that feeds off of excellence. We have chamber choir, which is an elite ensemble composed of 16 to 18 singers. Then chorale, it's a large ensemble of roughly 50 singers. We have a women's chorus. When they come in here, they have the chance to sing. And when we sing, it releases endorphins and it makes us happy. So to give students an environment where they can be happy, where they can move on from things that are going on in their life. That's a challenging thing to do.
You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. I'm your host, Scarlett Simpson. I'm joined by Barry Simpson, the woman behind this year's Home and Garden Tours, alongside Bradford Sterling, whose home will be featured during this year's tour. Mr. Sterling, Ms. Simpson, thank you so much for being on the show today.
You're welcome.
Well, Central Gardens has been around for a long time. Ms. Simpson, can you give us a brief history of all the history surrounding Central Gardens?
The history is interesting, and a lot of it is captured in this book that was commissioned by the Central Gardens Association in late 1998 and written by Barbara Visor, who still lives on Carr Avenue in the neighborhood. And what's interesting is this book is still relevant today as it was when it was written. And we are reissuing it this year, and Barbara will be signing it at the home tour. What's interesting is on page 5, the early years were the boom years, which was 1900 to 1929. And the majority of our homes were built during that time period. However, the one home that predates that is the Harbert House, which was built in the late 1800s and is one of the oldest homes in the neighborhood.
Well, Mr. Sterling, you have a wonderful home. Can you give us a brief history of the home?
Well, the house was built in 1922. We purchased the house 4 years ago and did a complete renovation in addition to an addition on the second floor rear. Outside of that, there's been, I guess, 4 or 5 owners before we purchased it, but the last renovation was done in the 1970s. So it really required us to almost strip a majority of the house back to the studs before we put it back together again.
Well, Ms. Simpson, as chair of Home and Tour Committee, what are some of your responsibilities?
Well, before I start telling you, quote, what I do, is I need to talk about the committee. This is a year-long endeavor with over 26 people on the committee, and we've been meeting since last December. And not only do we work hard, but we have some people that have been doing this for a long period of time. We have one woman, Nancy Willis, who has been president of Central Gardens Association 2 times, who's been on the committee for 26 years. So this just harkens to the dedication of the community to make this happen. On the day of the tour, there's hundreds of people that work, but my responsibility is just to facilitate all these wonderful people to make the tour happen.
Can you tell us about some of the preparation that goes on to putting the tour?
The list is a long one. It starts from developing a theme and a communications plan so we can actually get 1,500 people to attend the tour. Painstaking research of each of the 9 locations that are on the tour this year that was done by historian Judith Johnson. We procure sponsors, advertisers, retail establishments to sell tickets. We put up hundreds of yard signs and posters. We get local media support like yourself. We enlist the help of the local community to provide the day of entertainment. Opera Memphis this year will feature the Central High School Jazz Band. We will have a concert all day long at the Beethoven Club. There'll be a harpist at the Central Christian Church, as well as an art show. And we also have developed a hospitality center, which will feature food trucks, beer as well, and we will sell all kinds of Central Gardens memorabilia. We have tried to create a day of fun and festivities so that people will have a good time.
Well, it seems like you put a lot of work into the tour, but how are the homes and gardens on the tour selected?
Each home tour chair in her committee, or his committee, because there have been men in the past who have chaired it, come up with an idea of how to make their home tour the best ever. Sometimes it's based on geography of Central Gardens, sometimes it's a theme. We did both. So we decided again to use this Stories of a Neighborhood, that each house is featured in the book and the house has a story to tell that's interesting and germane to the tour goers. And then this year, all of the houses are in the eastern section of Central Gardens, with destinations on McLean, Peabody, Linden, Vinton, and Harbert. And each house, again, has a story to tell.
Well, this next question is for both of you. How do you think Central Gardens benefits both the community and Central Gardens mutually? Ms. Simpson, we'll start with you.
This was originally done as a PR effort. It was to show people what a jewel this neighborhood was when everyone was fleeing to the east. And so by doing this, we energize and we keep Central Gardens vibrant.
And Mr. Sterling?
I don't think there's anything more neighborly than inviting someone into your home. And so this is just a very grand scale, inviting everybody to showcase what Central Gardens has to offer. When you compare the size of the city to the number of homes that are historic with the age that we have, and the painstaking process that most homeowners go through in order to keep the homes historic, I think it's just a wonderful showcase.
Well, this is the 41st year for the event. Why do you think this tour has gained such popularity over the years?
People just love old homes. And Central Gardens is a thriving urban neighborhood tucked into the heart of Memphis. It's a fun place to visit. And each year, the new home tour tries to make their tour the most exciting. So in addition to incredible homes and entertainment, we've added other things to do too. But what makes the tour so much fun is the sense of community, the visiting with each other while you stand in line. And that sounds boring, but people have as much fun outside as they do inside. The joy of seeing a 100-year-old stained glass window, or the aha moment of seeing an exquisite painting that someone is sharing with you, as well as Brad said, seeing what young couples have done to improve these old homes and transform them, but still maintain their integrity. This is what makes them come back year after year. We have people that have been coming back for over 10 years, and then word of mouth bringing their family and friends.
Well, Ms. Simpson, Mr. Sterling, thank you so much for being on the show today. As you can see, Central Gardens provides our community with rich history as well as unique beauty you can only see here. I want to thank all my guests for being on the show. You can see the 3 homes featured on this program as well as others during this year's Home and Garden Tour on September 10th. I'm Scarlett Simpson. From all of us at GHS-TV, thank you for watching Crosstalk, and I hope to see you again.